underground military bases really exist? And if so, what actually goes on down there? And perhaps even more importantly, why is information about these bases so hard to come by? Time to go underground here on Things Visible and Invisible. Richard Sauder researches electronic mind control, freedom technology, human prehistory, and remote antiquity. His research into underground tunnels and underwater bases commenced in 1992 and continues to the present day. Included among his many books are Underground Bases and Tunnels, What is the Government Trying to Hide? Underwater and Underground Bases, Surprising Facts the Government Does Not Want You to Know, and Hidden in Plain Sight, Beyond the X-Files. And he joins me down the line from his home in Ecuador. Richard, welcome to Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be with you.
Richard, 1992 seems a long, long way away. What got you interested in this whole subject of underground bases?
Well, when I moved to the desert southwest of the United States in the late 1980s, I heard people talking about alleged underground bases where covert elements of the United States military allegedly were working with various extraterrestrial factions in great secrecy, out of sight, out of mind. I thought that was very interesting. In late 1991, I was laying in bed one night and I heard a voice suddenly speaking in my ear. I was completely awake and very relaxed. And the voice told me the underground bases are real and went on to describe vast subterranean complexes, huge, with a lot of technology and programs going on. And I also got a visual download along with that of a huge cavernous space full of beings. I couldn't tell. I was up above maybe 150 feet in my mind's eye. I couldn't tell if they were extraterrestrials, a human, or a mix. But there was huge technology there that I could not understand then and don't now. All I can tell you is that it was very, very large. And then it ended as soon as it began. And I was left wondering if what I was shown was true. So the following day, I went out to the research library at the university where I was studying and began a deep dive into the stacks and into the technical and governmental literature, industrial literature, so forth, and found that indeed it is true. There are underground bases and tunnels, and many of them.
Well, this is, it's one thing to have an idea, a dream, or a premonition of some sort that there are underground tunnels. There's another thing to then do what you've done, which is go away and research it to the extent that you've researched it. Given that you discovered quite quickly that there were underground bases in your researches, it begs the question, Richard, why other people haven't done the same research? Why these things aren't better known about?
Yeah, well, maybe it explains why I have been semi-shadow banned as well for many years. There are things that, well, you have to understand a lot of individuals in the so-called alternative news media and so forth are actually controlled opposition, and they will engage in what are called limited hangouts, where they will give you little dribs and drabs of the truth, but never the whole enchilada, because they're paid to be discreet. In other words, they're lapdogs that are on a short leash. Uh, and I've never worked for any of the agencies, you see, or any of the big corporations. So I've never signed the very inhibiting NDAs that you have to sign when you go to work for the alphabet agencies or the big Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 companies. So I'm not them. You're speaking with Richard Sauder and not them. So let's let it rip and get into it.
Okay, so Richard, when you started researching into these underground bases, what sort of things were you uncovering? I mean, for example, what would be, for somebody who's watching this who's maybe skeptical about the whole notion of underground bases, be they on land or under the sea, what would be the sorts of examples that you would point them to and say, how do you explain this?
Well, I'll just start with some of the very publicly known uh, or semi-publicly known underground bases and undersea bases that I quickly and easily ran across in my research, uh, mostly in the United States. Mind you, other countries have analogs or parallels. The Russians have deep facilities in Yamantau Mountains, for example, and the Chinese have very extensive underground facilities, huge, as do the Iranians and others. But my research has mostly focused on the United States. We would have Mount Weather in Northern Virginia, which is alternate continuity of government, a command bunker. It's very deep and very large. Uh, Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, where you have the Joint North American Aerospace Command. Uh, Camp David, the so-called presidential retreat in the Catoctin Mountains in Maryland, which is, I suppose you could call it a retreat in that, from what I've been told, it sprawls for miles on multiple levels deep beneath the mountains. One person who I talked to who went in on a maintenance contract for certain high technology that is there uh, assured me that it is highly doubtful that any one person has or could have the full extent and layout of the place in his or her mind because it's so huge and so extensive and so complex.
But there may be, I mean, being the devil's advocate, Richard, there may be reasons why there were these tunnels under government facilities. I mean, during the Cold War, I'm sure you're familiar, there were all sorts of underground bunkers that were designed in case of a nuclear attack or whatever. I mean, are we talking about something radically different from something which was basically a defense mechanism?
Yes, but then even when we're talking about defense, we have to talk about defense of what? Because the reality is that if they, and some of them were and are, uh, very deep and large facilities designed for nuclear war, I'm here to tell you and the listening and watching audience that if there's a shooting nuclear war, the general population is not going to be defended. The ones down in those deep, in some cases, 2 or 3 miles underground or more, are the very ones, whether in Britain or the United States or France, that a large portion of the population loathes and resent being ruled by. They will go on, we won't. So when you talk about national defense, it's not to defend the likes of you and me. No, sir.
So when in your research, Richard, when did these networks of tunnels, when did they start to be designed and when did they start to be built?
Well, that's a short question. The answer is a little bit longer. Um, the evidence that I've seen from my travels and my studies is that humans have been building deep underground and complex facilities underground for thousands of years. The underground cities in central Turkey are one example. The underground stuff in Egypt would be another example, and there are others. But in the modern era, more or less, it started with the French Maginot Line
Mhm.
in the early part of the 20th century, which the Germans just drove around. They didn't they didn't go up against the Maginot Line. They just drove around it in a blitzkrieg. So that wasn't effective. But the Germans then in the 30s and 40s did quite a bit of underground construction before and during World War II, extensive and very well built. The Japanese also did quite a lot of underground construction during World War II and after. Um, the United States, when when the war ended, there was a man named Sauder who was probably the leading engineer on underground facility construction in the 1940s.
And which country did he come from, Richard?
He was he was German. He was director of the Todt organization, which was founded by Fritz Todt, the father of the German Autobahn. The Todt organization was a an organization that was used by the Nazis uh, in much the same manner as the Seabees and the United States Army Corps of Engineers operate today. But it was not a military agency. It worked for the military, was not military. After the war, I Xaver Dorsch was requested by Operation Paperclip. Xaver Dorsch and three of his fellow engineers to be brought to the United States to work on the United States military's so-called underground plant program. This was in 1947. So they were already working on large, extensive, sophisticated underground facilities immediately after World War II in the United States, if not before. So he was in American Army custody immediately after the war, and I got a couple of the documents debriefing documents that he wrote. But right after the war, the United States military started, and other agencies started an extensive program of very deeply buried facilities that has never stopped. And I would also bring to your mind that there's a book called Breaking Cover by Bill Goley and Mary Ellen Reese. Bill Goley worked in the military office of the White House for, I think, in 5 different presidential administrations. The military office of the White House is at the president's beck and call to be used at his discretion, any and all of the American presidents, going all the way back to Truman and Eisenhower. During the 1950s, Eisenhower had dozens of deep underground facilities built all over the continental United States as presidential bolt holes where he could flee to in the event of some kind of crisis or disaster. I believe all of those remain to this day and probably are maintained in an operation, and a great deal more. Some of the corporations that are involved are Black and Veatch, Lockheed Martin, Bechtel, Kiewit is heavily involved, the Robbins Tunnel Boring Machine Company in Washington State, and many other corporations, Parsons, Brinkerhoff, Quaid and Douglas, and then another company called Parsons. And both of these, not the same company, and they're both involved in many secret activities for the federal government.
But when you say, Richard, they're involved, do you mean they're involved in the construction of these?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Construction and maintenance. And
also, I mean, you alluded to the fact that, Eisenhower, for example, had many of these constructed. I mean, other than a sort of, again, somewhere, as you say, a bolt hole, somewhere to go to in the event of an emergency, I mean, on the surface, that doesn't sound particularly sinister, that governments would have somewhere that they can go to.
Well, if you think government is a benign thing and not a sinister thing.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What do you think was, what else do you think was at play here?
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
This very much interconnects with something called special access programs, which you get into essentially on a blood oath. You sign your life away when you go into these programs. I promise you, there are people who are watching this interview right now, some of whom are in these programs or know people who are. When you go in, you're in a hermetically compartmentalized program, and nasty things happen. If it were good, we would be told. The fact that we are not indicates that you are not considered worthy, intelligent enough, or good enough to know what is being done. And mind you, a great deal of this is outside of the oversight of the so-called government. Catherine Austin Fitts, whom you should interview if you have not, is a a top drawer financial analyst and knows quite a lot about the operations of government, having worked for government. She estimates, she and others working with her, that $27 trillion have just disappeared into the black budget in the United States. That's virtually a parallel economy. And the general public are not being told what that money is used for. Her research and mine both point to secret underground and underwater bases as one of the destinations of those trillions of dollars. And one person who contacted me, whose name I can't reveal, a lot of people talk to me, and virtually none of them consent to being publicly identified because it's dangerous. She, when she was a little girl, was in one of the military and CIA mind control programs, and she was trained as a little girl. See, their minds are cracked; they're broken psychologically, and when you're in that raw psychological state, in a state of panic, like a panicked little baby, the psychologists that work in these dark programs, what I would call satanic programs, program multiple personalities into your psyche and then give them passwords, right? So that they can access the personality, but even the individual in question cannot. There are trigger words that send them in, or trigger words or alphanumeric codes that send them into an alternate personality, which could be an assassin, a thief, like a Project Monarch sex slave, for example, this or a spy, this type of thing. This little girl was put in one of these programs by her father. Frequently, see, it's the parents who work in these programs and then bring their children in too. And the child has no say in it, obviously is not of age. She was just a little girl, like 5 years old, and they were training her to be a mental assassin. She was taken into an underground facility in Northern Virginia, and there was a very prominent United States politician who was down there. She didn't know him at the time, but as she grew older, she remembered who it was and recognized his name. I won't mention his name either. But they brought her down there to have her kill someone. She was told there was someone sitting behind a curtain and that she was to kill that person mentally, which she had been trained to do. And this high-profile politician was standing by watching the whole thing. Evidently, she succeeded and was told that she'd done a good job, and it ended. She was taken back to the surface world, and that's just one small example of the kinds of things that happen. You see, what makes this nefarious is that we have some sizable chunk of at least, mind you, at least $27 trillion that have been spent on this kind of thing, and we don't know. That's why I say it's not good, sir. It's not good at all.
Right. Richard, unfortunately, we've come to the end of this episode. Tell people where they can find out more about you and the work that you are involved in.
Well, thank you. I have a Substack, which is quite simply richardsauder.substack.com. That's RICHARDSAUDER.substack.com. And then I have 3 books: Underground Bases and Tunnels, What is the Government Trying to Hide? Hidden in Plain Sight, On Beyond the X-Files, and Underwater and Underground Bases, Surprising Facts the Government Does Not Want You to Know. They are all available through Amazon or any other major bookseller.
For now, Richard, thank you so much for coming on Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Things Visible and Invisible. We're dedicated to uncovering phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, from ancient enigmas and paranormal encounters to scientific anomalies and forgotten histories. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious and unexplained, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to stay updated on future explorations. Have a personal experience or story that aligns with our investigations? We'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at tvi.show and reach out through our contact form. While we can't feature every submission, we review them all, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. To support our continued investigations, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. Your contributions make these explorations possible and give you access to exclusive content, early releases, and monthly behind-the-scenes discussions with our team. Don't forget to check out our merch store. We've got everything from TVI-branded t-shirts and hoodies to stickers and coffee mugs, perfect for showing your support while keeping the mysteries close. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the things visible and invisible.